Hey guys, it's ModernGamer, back with a team report for the team I used to get top 16 at the Los Angeles Regionals. This regional was the last major event before the 2024 North American International Championships. The format for the regional would be Regulation G, which allows trainers to use up to one restricted legendary Pokemon on their team. The restricted legendaries are all super strong, having a mix of strong spread attacks, single target nuke options, and setup options to boost up and become even stronger. Choosing which one to build your team around is a tough choice, so I decided to use a restricted Pokemon I was really comfortable with and had experience with in the past, Groudon. Historically, Groudon is one of the most successful restricted Pokemon of all time. It has seen strong performances in every restricted format it has been legal in, from winning the World Championships back in 2010 piloted by Ray Rizzo, all the way to winning the North American International in 2022 piloted by James Evans. For my team, I paired Groudon with Fluttermane, Chi-Yu, Tornadus, Incineroar, and Rillaboom. Groudon's ability Drought sets up the sun, which amplifies the team's fire damage by 1.5 times. It also activates Fluttermane's ability Photosynthesis. In ideal conditions, gives Fluttermane a free 1.5 times speed boost. The main goal of the team is to set up positional pins against your opponent with a mix of spread attacks and single target moves. Groudon, Fluttermane, and Chi-Yu all have a spread option and a single target nuke option, making it very difficult for opponents to switch in safely. The Groudon on my team is meant to be as fast and aggressive as possible. Being max speed meant that Groudon could outspeed almost any Pokemon in Tailwind, including opposing Fluttermane that might try to take advantage of the sun being set up. I put 4 EVs in each defensive stat to help with certain damage rolls, and the rest into attack. Clear Amulet and the Fire Terra typing are standard on Groudon to block opposing Intimidate and Burns. The extra damage on Terra Fire Heat Crash is really nice, and Fire typing in general is pretty good defensively. Some people might ask, why Groudon over Koraidon? To me, Groudon's biggest selling point is its ground typing and coverage in Precipice Blades, or P-Blades for short. P-Blades is a spread physical ground attack that only hits your opponent's Pokemon, making it an excellent option when trying to set up offensive pins. This doesn't come without a cost, as P-Blade sits at an uneasy 85% accuracy. Heat Crash is a physical fire attack that deals damage based on Groudon's weight. Groudon is so heavy that a majority of non-restricted Pokemon will take the full 120 base power of the attack, with the downside that opposing heavy Pokemon will take relatively little damage. Groudon's third move changed a lot in testing, but I landed on Thunder Punch to help cover for water and flying type Pokemon. Fluttermane is the second Pokemon on the team, and even though it isn't my restricted Pokemon, I'd argue it's the Pokemon I really built the team around. It pairs well with the Sun archetype, getting a stat boost from its Photosynthesis ability while the sun is set up. Fluttermane's choice specs Terra Fairy, Moonblast, and Dazzling Gleam are some of the strongest attacks in the game, and Shadow Ball and Power Gem give it perfect neutral coverage. I decided to use a timid Fluttermane with just enough bulk to survive common priority attacks and opposing strong special attacks. The timid nature guarantees that it'll get a speed boost from Photosynthesis in the sun, allowing it to outpace faster Pokemon like Calyrex Shadow, and slower Pokemon in Tailwind like Urshifu and Terapagos. Fluttermane is the main source of offense and damage on the team. Its strong Fairy-type attacks pair well with Groudon and Chi-Yu's coverage to create perfect offensive pins. When your opponent can't safely switch in or out, their only options are to somehow prevent damage, be faster and take a knockout, or otherwise lose a lot of material. Chi-Yu naturally came next on the team, taking advantage of Groudon to boost its fire attacks and to boost Fluttermane's already huge damage output with Beads of Ruin. I decided to run a very standard Chi-Yu, with Focus Sash to always live one hit and a Ghost Terra type to prevent Fake Out disruption. Overheat was the main attack on Chi-Yu, offering one-hit KOs in the sun against almost anything that didn't resist it. I used Dark Pulse as the Dark type coverage to have the highest single target damage possible. The one major change I made was opting for Burning Jealousy over Heat Wave as a spread fire attack. Burning Jealousy is 70 base power, which is a chunk less than Heat Wave's 90 base power. The trade-off, though, is that Burning Jealousy is 100% accurate, and offers a lot of interesting pins with its special ability. If an opposing Pokemon has a stat rise on the turn you use Burning Jealousy, they will get burned. This works even for stat changes that happen before the first turn, meaning Pokemon like Zacian and Zamazenta will always get burned the first turn they come out unless they protect or prevent the damage otherwise. It also came in big against the Calyrex forms and Defiant Pokemon whenever they got a boost mid-turn. Tornadus is the next Pokemon on the team, and the last of what I would call the team's main strategy. Tailwind is a common support tool in Regulation G, giving your offensive threats a way to go first against faster Pokemon. It's also necessary to keep up with your opponent's Tailwind if they have it as an option. I chose Tornadus over other Tailwind setters because it hit the right mix of speed, bulk, and damage that I wanted. I trained my Tornadus to be super specially bulky, allowing it to set up Tailwind, take a strong special attack, and get at least one more turn to do something. It is just fast enough to outspeed slower Pokemon like Modest, Terapagos, and Goldengo. The low speed stat was actually to my advantage, as it allowed me to win Weather Wars against opposing Prankster Weather. Covert Cloak and the Dark Terra typing are meant to make Tornadus as difficult to interact with as possible. The guaranteed option of Tailwind, paired with uninteractable threats, meant that my opponents had very little they could do to disrupt my main strategy. To recap, my team so far is an aggressive Sun strategy with Tornadus as a bulky Tailwind and Weather supporter. Fluttermane and Tornadus can't be stopped by Fake Out, and Chi-Yu can Ghost Terrasilize to guarantee damage if necessary. Groudon gives Fluttermane and Chi-Yu a boost and beats a lot of common Pokemon, especially after its Fire Terrasilization. At this point in team building, I felt like there were three major threats to my team. Number one were the Calyrex forms. Fluttermane and Chi-Yu are hard to stop, but they can be stopped. Calyrex Ice is super strong and super bulky, and with a defensive Terrasilization, it can take a lot of attacks the main strategy has to offer. The other form, Calyrex Shadow, is faster than everything on the team barring Fluttermane with the Sun Boost, and if they have Focus Sash, they can live at least one hit from Fluttermane anyway. The second strategy I had trouble against was Miraidon teams that took advantage of Quark Drive. My team lines up well against Miraidon by itself, but not so well against Iron Bundle and Iron Hands, especially after Terrasilization. Max Speed Iron Bundle with the Quark Drive boost outspeeds my entire team, even Fluttermane in the Sun. The third issue I noticed is I didn't really have any positioning tools or switch-ins for teams that were faster or more aggressive than mine. Even a hyper offense team needs Pokemon that can switch in when you're in a bad position, and so far none of the Pokemon on my team do that. With all of that in mind, the next Pokemon on the team is Incineroar. Incineroar has been the old reliable balanced Pokemon since 2017 and 2018. Its typing and access to Fake Out were good enough to use it before it even got its hidden ability Intimidate, and ever since then has been a staple positioning Pokemon in VGC. I opted for a bulky Citrus set with Grass Terra typing to resist water and become immune to Rage Powder redirection if I need it. Most people opt out of Flare Blitz in Regulation G in favor of a second status move, but I wanted to keep it and take advantage of Groudon's Sun Boost for fire attacks. People don't expect their Pokemon to get one-hit KO'd by a bulky supporter, leading to situations where my big threat can protect into a double target and Incineroar gets to take free material. Knockoff is Incineroar's second attack, hitting multiple restricted Pokemon hard with its Dark typing. The second ability of removing items can be very strong against teams that rely on choice items and Life Orb to take knockouts, as well as Assault Vest to reduce my special attacking damage. Will-O-Wisp was my status move of choice over Parting Shot. Clear Amulet is a common choice on physical restricted Pokemon in Regulation G, and the Fire Terra typing isn't super common on things like Calyrex Ice. In addition, anything that could Terra out of Will-O-Wisp would get pinned by Groudon's P-Blades and Fluttermane's Power Gem. Incineroar greatly improves my matchups against my number 1 threat Calyrex forms, and number 3 having a good switch-in. But what about the Miraidon matchup? In to save the day is Rillaboom. Rillaboom is the new balanced super buddy with Incineroar, and it solves the Miraidon problem almost all on its own. Rillaboom's Grassy Surge gives the team control over opposing terrain, conveniently checking opposing Miraidon and pesky Expanding Force Psychic terrain strategies. With Assault Vest and training to be super physically bulky, Rillaboom is capable of taking all but the strongest super effective attacks in the game. My attacks are all super standard, with Woodhammer as a damage option, Grassy Glide as a priority option with Grassy Terrain up, and U-Turn to reposition back into my attackers when the time is right. It doubles up with Incineroar as a pseudo-balance mode for the team. Fake Out is an easy way to get free turns, and each turn matters a lot in such an aggressive metagame. That just about sums up my team building process going into the regional. The team is very standard overall, with Groudon being the only thing that really sticks out about it. The question now is, how did the team hold up during the regional?
Alright, win-win, win-win, win-loss-loss, win-win, win-loss-win, win-win, win-win, win-win. Yeah, I've lost 3 games this entire weekend, and I missed about like 6 P-Blades roughly.
Round 1 starts, and my opponent is running a fairly standard Calyrex Ice team with emphasis on a Trick Room mode. My goal was to beat down my opponent's Pokemon with Groudon, while stalling Trick Room and supporting the team with Incineroar and Rillaboom. I made a super hard prediction turn 1 of Game 1, anticipating my opponent to switch into Incineroar and protect their Calyrex Ice. Amoonguss had a couple opportunities to spore my Pokemon, but I was able to come out on top, even under Trick Room. Starting the day strong with the round 1 win, I head into round 2. My opponent's restricted Pokemon is Kyogre, which is typically a good matchup for me. I lead Tornadus both games to maintain speed control and the weather advantage, with Rillaboom in the back to threaten Kyogre and remove Psychic terrain if needed from their Indeedee. In Game 2, I fumbled the weather advantage after setting up Tailwind and becoming faster than my opponent's Tornadus. Luckily for me, my Pokemon are just bulky enough to take Kyogre's onslaught of water attacks, and I go on to win round 2. Round 3 brings me my first Miraidon opponent of the day. My opponent had a team similar to Rajan Ball's regional winning team, with Iron Hands to take advantage of the electric terrain. My goal this set was to leverage Fluttermane and Groudon's coverage to pin Miraidon and Iron Hands, with Fire Terastallization available on Groudon to reduce their Chiyu's fire damage. Rillaboom stayed in the back both games to disrupt the electric terrain and finish things off in the late game. In round 4, my opponent was none other than Andrew Zhang, who managed to place second place at the Indianapolis Regional earlier this year. Andrew's restricted Pokemon of choice was Lunala, carrying leftovers and using a relatively uncommon set of Fairy Terra typing, Moongeist Beam, Moonblast, Calm Mind, and Protect. To me, there were 2 clear modes he could go for. Calm Mind set up with screens and Fake Out support, and Choice Scarf Urshifu plus Pelipper to threaten quick water-type knockouts. The rain mode was scary, but I felt like Andrew couldn't afford to go all in on it, and chose to play around the screens mode instead. Game 1 was close, coming down to both sides switching every turn for weather control and defensive positioning. Andrew only had one opportunity to set up Calm Mind, which wasn't enough of a boost to KO Groudon or my balanced Pokemon in one hit. In addition, Pelipper missed a key Hurricane on a Groudon switch-in, allowing it to survive for a turn and get one more attack off. Incineroar ends the game in style by surviving a Moonblast on 1 HP and finishing Lunala off with Flare Blitz. In Game 2, Andrew opts to lead Urshifu and Grimmsnarl. I correctly counter his lead by bringing Tornadus as a way to set the sun up, and Tailwind if necessary. Andrew goes for the play that gives him the best odds of winning in this position, Thunderwaving my Fluttermane and hoping for full paralysis. Game 3 goes similarly to Game 1, coming down to who can maintain weather control and positioning with their balanced Pokemon. Groudon switches in to change the weather once again, and dodges a key Hurricane in the process. Incineroar uses this opportunity to use a sun-boosted Flare Blitz, knocking out Lunala and effectively winning me the set. Round 5 brings me yet another interesting restricted matchup in Terra Normal Extreme Speed Rayquaza. In Game 1, my opponent led Rayquaza next to Ogerpon Wellspring, with the intention of disrupting my weather and allowing Ogerpon to attack with full power water attacks. In response, I led Fluttermane and Chiyu to threaten damage right away, and not be too susceptible to the extreme speed mode. Turn 1, I go for my ace in the hole, using Burning Jealousy and a strong fairy type attack to pin Ogerpon. My opponent opted to Terrastallize their Ogerpon, raising its special defense by 1 stage. This proves to be a fatal mistake for my opponent, as my Chi-Yu outspeeds Ogerpon and burns it with Burning Jealousy's special ability. Game 2 was an intense hyper-offense mirror match between Flutter mains. My speed control proved to be too strong for my opponent to handle, bringing me to a record of 5 wins and 0 losses. I thought at this point in the tournament, I couldn't face anything more unique than I had, but I was wrong. If you looked at my team and tried to make a hard counter to it, then you'd probably get something similar to my round 6 opponent's team featuring Lugia with Calm Mind, Screens, Healing, and a Pelipper for weather control. I can normally deal with either Screens or the Rain, but not both at the same time. I didn't have a chance to save many replays during the set because the games were so intense. I go for a Hail Mary in Game 2 and score a critical hit overheat in the Rain to effectively win me the game. I had a couple opportunities to win in Game 3, but my opponent positioned correctly against my threats and went on to win the set. This was my first loss of the tournament, but I wasn't going to be discouraged after having such a bad matchup. My round 7 matchup is against yet another Kyogre team. I execute a similar strategy to my round 2 match, leading off with Tornadus and Flutter main to maintain speed and weather control early on, with Rillaboom and Groudon in the back. Game 1 ends rather quickly, as my Flutter main outsped my opponents 2 turns in a row. Rillaboom and Groudon go on to win the first game by pinning Kyogre and Flutter main with Rillaboom's Wood Hammer and Groudon's P-Blades. In Game 2, I go for the same setup with the intention of playing aggressively with my Rillaboom earlier in the game. This forced Kyogre to use its Grass Terastallization, allowing me to pin it with Dazzling Gleam and Heat Crash later on in the game. My hyper offense strategy was too much for my opponent's team to handle, leading me to a record of 6 wins and 1 loss. I only needed 1 more win to make Day 2 of the competition. Round 8 brings me my first Sun mirror match of the tournament. My opponent sports a relatively standard Sun team, featuring Groudon as a restricted Pokemon. Groudon matches up really well against my opponent's entire team, so I decided to go for my hyper offense mode with Groudon and Tornadus as the lead. Groudon and Tornadus start Game 1 by connecting all of their P-Blades and Bleak Wind Storms, allowing me to knock out my opponent's Incineroar despite its Ghost Terastallization. I clean up the game with Flutter main and Chi-Yu in the back. In Game 2, I go for extremely aggressive reads for the first few turns. I lead Flutter main and Groudon, switch Groudon out to Chi-Yu, and go for a Power Gem with Flutter main, predicting my opponent's Groudon to use its Fire Terastallization. Groudon survives the attack on very low HP, and doubles into Chi-Yu with Chien-Pao for the knockout. I bring Groudon back in and protect it, predicting the double up yet again, and breaking Chien-Pao's Focus Sash with Power Gem. The game ends relatively quickly after this point, with Flutter main surviving Chien-Pao's Sucker Punch. I win the set in 2 games, earning me my 7th win and guaranteeing me a spot in Day 2. In Round 9, I am paired against a very successful player and regional champion, Andrew Ding. Andrew's team is more or less an exact copy of my Round 7 opponent's team, and at this point in the tournament, I couldn't be happier to hit a good matchup. I go for the same strategy as I did then, opting for Flutter main and Tornadus as a lead, with Groudon and Rillaboom in the back. In a twist of fate, I misclicked my Tornadus' move turn 1, going for Bleak Wind Storm instead of Tailwind. Everything ends up working out for me though, as Serena gets knocked out by a critical hit Dazzling Gleam. Serena being gone meant that Rillaboom could come in and threaten Urshifu and Kyogre with Fake Out and strong grass type attacks, winning me the first game of the set. Game 2 goes the exact same way my second game of Round 7 did. Both sides set up Tailwind and opt for Dazzling Gleam with Flutter main. I use Sunny Day the next turn to allow my Flutter main to outspeed my opponent's Iron Jugulis, netting me 2 early knockouts. Even though both of my Pokemon go down after this point, the damage was too much for my opponent to come back from. I win Round 9, bringing me to a final day 1 record of 8 wins and 1 loss. My team and play felt great so far in this tournament, and I couldn't wait to compete in day 2. I was doing so well that playing on the official Pokemon stream became more and more of a possibility. Would my old buddy Groudon be able to pull through and get me there? Let's find out. In round 10, the first round of day 2, my opponent had a very interesting Miraidon team featuring the same combination of Sableye, Rillaboom, and Comfey I saw in round 6. The Annihilate was a standard bulk up set, and Mousehold opted for the more aggressive Population Bomb attack with Wide Lens and Technician. My assumption was that Annihilate is the main strategy of the team, with screens and healing to support the team, and Miraidon to deter Amoonguss and clean up in the endgame. I go for my Hyper Offense mode in this set, with Rillaboom in the back to disrupt Miraidon in the late game. My Chi-Yu and Fluttermane double up to knock out Sableye, and Annihilate's Rage Fist knocks out my Fluttermane. On the second turn, I Terrasilize my Groudon and spread out my attacks to punish my opponent no matter what they do. The game comes down to Annihilate and Rillaboom versus Miraidon and Annihilate, with Rillaboom taking the terrain advantage. Groudon connects both Precipice Blades to win me game 1. In game 2, my opponent makes a good adjustment and plans on setting up Trick Room with Comfey. I brought Tornadus this game, anticipating my opponent to go for their fast mode, a decision that would end up losing me game 2. In game 3, both my opponent and I switch back to our strategies from game 1. This time around, I predict that my opponent won't protect their Annihilate on turn 1. I go for a double up pin on Annihilate with Terra Fairy Moonblast to guarantee a knockout even if Sableye sets up the light screen. My opponent forfeits the game a few turns later, leading me to my first win of day 2. In round 11, I once again match into a Lunala team. This Lunala, rather than setting up with Calm Mind, aimed to set up Trick Room and threaten big boosted damage with Meteor Beam. With no weather control available on my opponent's side, I opt to go for my full Sun mode with Fluttermane, Chi-Yu, Incineroar, and Groudon. I don't have many replays from this round, but from what I can recall, Groudon knocked out Lunala both games with Heat Crash, and Trick Room never went up more than once. I won both games this set, but it was still really fun and really challenging. The Hyper Offense mode of the team pulls through, bringing me to a whopping record of 10 wins and 1 loss. At this point in the tournament, if I win one more round, I'm almost guaranteed to top cut the regional. I felt like I had good matchups so far this tournament, but after hearing what my potential opponents were running, I knew the last win would be really challenging to secure. My opponent for round 12 would be Michael Zhang, a regional winner with multiple major top cut finishes, and we would be playing on stream. I was nervous and excited about going on stream, but I knew I would have a good time no matter what. Michael's team is built around the duo of Zamazenta and Chien-Pao to spam strong physical attacks. The rest of their team consists of silver bullet answers to specific strategies, with Chandelure being the scariest for my team to face. Will I be able to take a win and guarantee a spot in top cut? Game 1 starts with my Groudon and Tornadus facing Zamazenta and Chien-Pao. I Terrasilize my Chi-Yu turn 1, going for Burning Jealousy and Tailwind to set up speed control and force Zamazenta to protect as to not get burned. I lose Tornadus in the process and bring out Fluttermane to replace it. Michael swaps out Zamazenta for Chandelure, excellently calling a fire move going into that slot, and Chien-Pao Sucker Punches Chi-Yu on its way out to break my Focus Sash. Chandelure and Zamazenta went on to sweep my team, winning Michael game 1. To be completely honest, the nerves finally got to me this round, and I wasn't playing my best. I didn't have much practice in this specific matchup, and even though I liked my strategy game 1, I wasn't able to come up with the right plays in time. Despite all of this, I think hard about my strategy for game 2 and come up with a gambit. I feel like Michael would be more prepared for my Tailwind lead this game and bring Flutter main, so I opt to lead Incineroar and Chi-Yu. My idea for game 2 is this: overwhelm Michael's physical attackers with Incineroar's Fake Out, Intimidate, and Will-O-Wisp to force a Protect on turn 1. If Michael leads Flutter main, I plan on Flare Blitzing it turn 1, predicting a Protect. Michael leads exactly what I expected. I switch in Groudon for Chi-Yu to set up the Sun, and Terrasilize my Incineroar to cover for a potential Body Press play. Incineroar takes out Flutter main in one hit with a Sun boosted Flare Blitz, netting a one-hit knockout on the first turn of the game. The game isn't over yet though. Michael makes just as hard of a read against me the next turn, opting not to Terrasilize Chandelure, expecting me to play around Wide Guard or the Grass Terra on Chandelure. This is the turning point of the whole set, as if I had taken a knockout on Chandelure this turn, I likely would have had a chance to win and play a third game. I brought Tornadus in the back, leaving me with no way to hit Zamazenta hard at all. Michael cleans up with Icicle Crashes and Body Press, winning them the set and leaving me at a record of 10 wins and 2 losses. Taking a loss on stream stings a lot, especially when winning this set would have guaranteed a spot in top cut. There were 2 more rounds to go. In round 13, I play against regional champion Rajan Ball. His team utilizes similar Sun abusers to my team, with Groudon over Groudon and a Choice Scarf Chi-Yu instead of a Focus Sash one. The faster pace of his team compared to mine meant that I needed to gain a speed control advantage to come out on top. Game 1 starts with Rajan and I waiting for the other one to Tailwind first. We trade blows over the first few turns, but I eventually found a position with Groudon and Tornadus facing off against Groudon and Chi-Yu. All I needed to guarantee a win now was for Precipice Blades to double connect. And it didn't. And it didn't. My luck had been great so far this tournament, so I wasn't surprised to finally miss an attack when it mattered the most. I still had a chance to win though, as Tornadus was still full HP and the sun had just ended. Here's where things get really funny. Tornadus goes on to miss multiple Bleak Windstorms against Chi-Yu. I missed so many Bleak Windstorms that Rajan's Chi-Yu had time to run out of overheat power points and knock out my Tornadus with struggle. After losing game 1 with such bad luck, I locked in hard to find opportunities to win in game 2. I didn't save any notes or replays from the game, but from what I remember, Rajan played excellently to make sure that I never had an opening to come out ahead in the speed control wars. To be honest, even if I had won game 1, I think Rajan would have won the set anyway as long as I didn't get lucky. Round 13 comes to an end, leaving me with a record of 10 wins and 3 losses. Through all of the luck, the interesting teams, the hard predictions, and the weather wars and speed control wars, we made it to round 14 of the competition. At this point, even if I win the round, it's very unlikely that I will make top cut with my resistance. Despite the popularity of both Calyrex forms, round 14 is only the second Calyrex I played against all tournament, that being Calyrex Ice. This time I'd be facing off against one of the most popular variants of the team, featuring the common Firewater Grass core of Incineroar, Urshifu Rapid Strike, and Rillaboom. Pelipper turns the matchup in my opponent's favor, removing my Sun and allowing Urshifu to outspeed my entire team and threaten one-hit knockouts. I wish I had much to say about this set. The matchup came down to who could find free opportunities to attack while both sides repositioned every turn. Out of all of the rounds of Incineroar and Rillaboom mirrors, John by far played the best. It felt like both of us knew what would happen every turn, and inevitably I would fall behind at the end of it. He won game 1 off of the match timer running out with a lead in hit points, and game 2 ended only slightly sooner than that. After the end of round 14, with a final record of 10 wins and 4 losses, I get 15th place overall at the regional. Despite the final few rounds not going my way, I'm still very satisfied with how I did at this regional. I've played since 2015, with multiple regional top cuts and more top 16s and 32s than I can count. Being on the official stream was my main goal of the tournament. Not only did I make it on stream, but I got to do it having fun with my old buddy Groudon again. My group and I opened my prize packs, celebrating such a solid tournament run, and went on to enjoy the night with some food and adult refreshments. If there was anything I could have changed before the tournament, I probably would have used a Fire Terra typing on Rillaboom. I also probably should have practiced against the Sun Mirror and Zamazenta, since I didn't see them that often online. Like they say though, play your best and have no regrets. I'm ModernGamer, and thanks for watching.